The barn was dark, heavy with the stench of hay and sweat. A single lantern swung from a nail, its light carving cruel shadows across the beams. Clara's wrists burned raw where the coarse rope dug deep, every tremor in her body making the knot bite harder. Her breath came sharp and shallow, the sound of her own fear filling the silence. Jonas Black stood over her, boots planted wide in the dust. The outlaw's eyes glimmered with liquor and spite, his voice a rasp of hatred. "You think the land's yours? That cabin? That herd? Nothing belongs to you, not a damn thing." Clara flinched as he yanked the rope tighter, her shoulders wrenching against the post. She forced herself not to cry, not to give him the satisfaction. "It was my mother's," she whispered, her voice thin but steady. Jonas's laugh cracked through the barn like a whip. He crouched low, his breath sour with whiskey. "And now she's dead, which makes it mine." The lantern's glow flickered across his scarred jaw as he slapped her hard across the face. The sound echoed off the wooden beams, leaving her cheek burning, her ears ringing. Clara tasted blood on her lip but raised her chin anyway. Her eyes, though wet with tears, held a fire he couldn't stamp out. "You'll break," Jonas muttered, standing tall, hitching his belt. "By dawn you'll beg me to let you go." His spurs clinked as he turned, the barn door creaking open to the desert night. Cold wind swept in, carrying the cry of coyotes, the smell of dust and sage. Jonas stepped into the darkness, his silhouette swallowed by the night, and the door slammed shut. Alone, Clara sagged against the post. Her arms throbbed, her chest rising in ragged gasps. She thought of her mother's hands braiding her hair, of warm mornings when the world had still felt kind. The memories only sharpened the cruelty of the rope biting into her skin now. She closed her eyes, peering to herself as though the words might reach someone, anyone, beyond those wooden walls. "This injustice ends now." The lantern flickered, casting her shadow tall against the planks, fragile yet unbroken. The ropes held her fast, but in the trembling silence hope clung stubborn as the light itself. The barn was silent now, save for the groan of timber in the cold night wind. Clara's wrists ached where the rope cut deeper with every small struggle. The coarse fibers gnawed her skin raw, warm blood tracing a line down her hand before drying in the dust. Jonas's boots had faded into nothing, the sound of hooves pounding away, swallowed by the vast desert. He had left her there to rot, to suffocate in the dark like some forgotten animal. Her chest tightened, every breath shorter than the last as the rope cinched around her shoulders. She fought to draw air, head drooping against her chest. Her lips trembled, whispering a plea too faint for any ears. "Help me, please." But no one answered. Only the cry of a nightbird outside mocking her desperation. Clara forced her head back, staring up at the loft beams above her. A shaft of pale moonlight slipped through a crack in the wood, falling across her face. Dust swirled in its glow like stars, fragile reminders of a sky she might never see again. Her tears shimmered in the thin light, proof she was still alive, though barely. Her throat burned as she coughed, her voice rough but defiant. "This injustice ends now," she rasped, though the barn walls swallowed the sound. The lantern beside her guttered low, casting shadows like reaching hands across her body. She could feel the cold creep into her bones, her blood running icy under skin torn by rope. Her pulse weakened, every beat slower, heavier. For one terrible moment she felt herself drifting towards silence, surrender tempting her like a dark river. But the image of Jonas's sneer snapped her back. She would not give him that victory. Her jaw clenched, teeth gritted against the pain. The rope may have bruised her flesh, but her spirit stayed unbroken. She shifted her weight, grinding the rope against the beam, testing its strength. It burned, it tore at her skin, but still she struggled, stubborn as the desert wind outside. The barn door rattled faintly, as if the night itself waited with bated breath. Clara's eyes fixed on the crack of moonlight, her last tether to hope, and though her voice barely rose above a whisper, it carried the force of her will. "I will not die here." The crunch of gravel under horse hooves snapped through the desert stillness before Clara even realized she was moving. Elias' heart shadow stretched long across the barn wall as he dismounted, leather boots kicking up dust that caught the first pale light of dawn. His eyes, hard and steady, took in the scene. Ropes fraying against raw wrists, blood streaked across pale skin, and the young woman trembling against the post. "Hold on," he said, voice low but urgent. He unslung his knife and cut through the ropes with a swift snap. Clara gasped as the fibers fell to the floor, her lungs filling with air as if she'd been underwater for hours. Pain shot through her wrists, but relief, raw, fierce, washed over her. "Thank you," she whispered, voice hoarse. Her legs wobbled as he helped her to her feet. Elias's hands were firm but gentle, wrapping her in a thick wool blanket he had brought from his saddlebag. "You're safe now," he said. His eyes scanned the barn, wary, alert for any return of Jonas. "I won't let him near you again." The wind stirred through the barn cracks, carrying with it the scent of sage and dust, and the distant bray of a mule. Clara shivered, not just from cold, but from the terror that still lingered in her chest. Elias guided her toward his horse, and the desert stretched before them, silent and unforgiving, yet oddly comforting under the rising sun. Her voice was barely audible over the wind. Where are we going?" "To my ranch," he replied, leading her gently. "Somewhere you can heal. Somewhere safe." Every step across the rough ground pressed the memory of the ropes into her mind, but also strengthened her resolve. The barn, once a tomb of fear, now seemed like a distant nightmare. The sun burned the horizon gold, lighting the dust in streaks that glimmered like hope. As Elias lifted her onto the horse behind him, Clara's fingers gripped his coat, her knuckles white. I thought I was done for." "Not tonight," he said, adjusting the blanket around her shoulders. "Not ever again." The horse moved forward, hooves drumming a steady rhythm against the earth. Behind them the barn receded into shadow, the past left in dust and darkness. In front of them the open desert glowed with morning light, a promise of safety, of shelter, and of a chance to fight back. And as Clara held on tight, feeling the warmth of Elias's hand steadying her, she dared to believe she might survive. She might even win. Morning filtered through the small windows of Elias's cabin, soft and golden, warming the rough wooden walls. Clara stirred under the thick quilt, her wrist still raw, but for the first time in hours, or maybe days, she felt the faintest sense of safety. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of wild sage and distant desert blooms, a world alive beyond the terror she'd left behind. Elias knelt beside the hearth, stoking the fire. Flames licked the logs, sending warm light dancing across the room. The ranch dog lifted its head, giving a low growl that quickly melted into a contented sigh as it curled back into the hearth's warmth. Clara's eyes followed the movement, hesitant but fascinated. This cabin, with its quiet life and simple order, felt almost impossible after the chaos of the barn. "You'll need food," Elias said, glancing at her with the weight of experience in his eyes. "And rest. No one can face the desert or men like him without it." Clara tried to sit, legs stiff and sore. I don't even know how I made it out," she admitted, voice trembling. Her eyes flicked to the window where the sun caught the dust motes in shafts of gold, like tiny sparks of hope. "You made it because you didn't give up," Elias said, laying a hand lightly on her shoulder. His voice was calm but firm, like the ground beneath their feet. "I've lost a daughter once. I won't lose another, not like this." Tears welled, and Clara blinked them back, swallowing hard. She didn't want pity, didn't want anyone to see the fragility of the fear that still clung to her. Yet in the warmth of the fire and the steadiness of Elias's gaze, she felt her resolve return, sharper and stronger than before. She pulled the quilt tighter around her, looking at the small cabin walls and the promise they held. I won't be weak," she whispered, almost to herself. "I'll fight. I'll survive." Elias nodded, a faint smile brushing his weathered face. "Good. That's the spirit that keeps men alive in this land. Fear can kill you faster than a gun. Outside, the desert shimmered under the rising sun. Dust swirled in lazy spirals, the wind teasing at loose boards, carrying with it the sound of distant horses. Clara watched, silent, absorbing the serenity and the promise it brought. The barn and Jonas's cruelty felt farther away than ever, replaced by firelight, quilted warmth, and the knowledge that she was, finally, under protection. For the first time since that fateful night, Clara allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be free. The horizon burned orange and red as the sun climbed above the desert, casting long shadows across the ranch. Clara's hands still bore the faint bruises of the rope, but her posture had straightened. She watched Elias as he cleaned his rifle, every movement deliberate, calm, a man who had faced danger before and survived. The clatter of hooves reached them first, a warning carried on the wind. Jonas Black and two of his men appeared at the edge of the ranch, dust rising in their wake. Their eyes were hard, predatory, and filled with the same greed that had driven Jonas to leave Clara bound in that barn. Elias stepped onto the porch, boots creaking against the weathered wood. He didn't flinch. "You're not coming in," he called, voice steady. Jonas spat into the dirt, his fingers brushing the handle of his pistol. "She's mine. Always has been, always will be." Clara's stomach knotted, fear twisting through her like a knife. She took a step back, clutching the edge of the porch, but Elias's presence steadied her. He met Jonas's gaze without flinching. Not tonight. Not ever again. A tense silence stretched between them, the desert wind swirling dust around their boots. The men shifted uneasily, the weight of Elias's calm authority heavier than any threat they carried. Jonas glared, fury etched deep into his scarred face, then turned his horse slowly, dragging his men with him. Clara exhaled slowly, letting the tension slip from her shoulders. Her voice trembled, barely a whisper. "I thought he'd come for me again." Elias's eyes softened, but he didn't lower his guard. "He will try," he said. "But you're not alone anymore, and we'll be ready." The ranch dog growled low, circling Clara protectively. The sound reminded her of the barn, the loneliness, the terror, but also of the strength she had found in Elias. The first real warmth of hope settled in her chest, cautious but undeniable. As Jonas disappeared over the horizon, Clara felt a flicker of something new. Courage. Her hands, bruised and raw, clenched at her sides. She knew this wasn't over, but for the first time she understood that she didn't have to face it alone. Elias lowered his rifle, stepping beside her. The wind tugged at the loose strands of her hair, the desert stretching endlessly before them. Clara's gaze followed it, the dust and sun creating a promise that even darkness could not erase. And in that moment she knew the fight was far from over, but now she had a chance to survive. The night pressed down heavy on the desert, the moon a pale sentinel in the sky. Clara sat by the cabin hearth, wrapped in a quilt, eyes wide and restless. Elias paced near the door, listening to the wind sift through the creaking boards, each gust a whisper of danger. The desert was quiet, too quiet, and Clara knew that calm was fleeting. A sudden noise shattered the stillness, hoofbeats pounding against the hard-packed earth, voices shouting over the wind. Jonas had returned, this time with a gang, torches ablaze, their light cutting through the darkness like jagged knives. Clara's heart raced, every muscle coiled in terror. Elias's hand rested on the rifle beside him, fingers tightening around the stock. "Stay low," he said, voice calm, almost a whisper, yet each word carried the weight of authority. "Don't make a sound." The gang approached, boots crunching gravel, torches casting flickering shadows that danced across the cabin walls. Clara pressed herself against the floorboards, feeling the heat of fear and the ache of raw wrists that still bore the marks of rope. She swallowed hard, biting back a scream as the barn's memory clawed at her mind. Jonas's voice cut through the night, coarse and cruel. "She won't hide from me forever. She belongs to me. Elias stepped outside, rifle leveled, eyes burning with unwavering resolve. "Not tonight," he shouted. "Not ever again." Gunfire cracked, echoing across the desert. Sparks leapt from torches as men ducked and stumbled, their shouts mingling with the sound of hooves thrashing the earth. Ara's breath caught in her throat as Elias returned inside, guiding her to safety. "Move," he commanded. The cabin trembled under the chaos, but Clara clung to the warmth of the firelight and Elias's steady presence. Every shadow on the walls became a test of courage. Her fear surged, then receded, replaced by a fierce determination. She would not be broken. She would not be silenced. She lifted her head, voice raw but defiant. "This injustice ends now." Elias caught her eyes, a brief nod acknowledging her strength. Together they watched the night unfold, the flames, the dust, the menace of Jonas's gang. And though danger loomed, Clara felt something new. Hope. A fragile, burning hope that even in the heart of darkness, courage could blaze brighter than any torch. The desert wind whispered through the cabin, carrying with it the promise of survival, of fight, and of justice yet to come.